processed foods and seed oil is one of the components of processed foods. And that is, all the science indicates that ultra processed foods are what are the principal culprit in this extraordinary explosion, the epidemic we have of chronic disease. When my uncle was president, 3% of Americans had chronic disease. Today, 60% do. We have 66% of adults are diabetic or pre-diabetic, 38% of teens. When you and I were kids, Sean, the average pediatrician would see one case of juvenile diabetes in his lifetime over a 40 or 50-year career. Today, 1 out of every 3 kids who walks through his office door is diabetic or pre-diabetic. Diabetes and
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Did everybody see that video? I'm wondering if the video is fixed. So if y'all can chime in. Good morning, AC. Carrie, good morning. Lucas. Good to see you guys. Good morning. So I'm hoping that video went through. I know we've been having some video problems. There's a little command I do here at the studio to add it to the screen, and last couple of times it hasn't really shown up. So I'm not sure if it's something on my end but if you guys saw that, maybe give me a thumbs up on that. So if you didn't see the video, it was RFK Jr. We're going to talk about the Make America Healthy Again campaign. And what I'm wondering is what you guys think of it, first of all. Okay, Gary, so it did come through. Good. Thank you. Yeah. So as you saw, RFK Jr., who is a baby boomer, obviously. He was, I guess, something like 12 or 13 years old, I think, when his uncle JFK was killed, and probably would have made him 16, 17 years old when his dad was killed. And so he's talking about the additives in food and how it's making us unhealthy, and more specifically, our kids unhealthy. And I see it. I've seen it for years now. I saw it in teaching a lot when I was a high school and junior high teacher. That was most of my population that I taught were minority populations, Latino, Black, Latino, Southeast Asian. I taught in some inner city schools here in San Diego area. And, but also it's across the board. Our children are, first of all, overweight. Now I was overweight as a kid. And I was the exception to the rule. Most of the kids in my school were at a healthy weight. I don't know how healthy they were, but they were at a healthy weight. I was not. I was a fat kid. So, but I think in high school, I lost weight, got on an exercise program, started eating differently. I started eating back then in the 70s. There was a lot of emphasis on natural foods. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember the commercial where Ewell Gibbons walks and says, "You ever eat a pine tree? Many parts are edible." Like he breaks open a pine tree and starts eating it. I doubt it, Gary, but okay. You're a kid though. I know. It's interesting that you say that. I want to get back to that concept of being a kid when you're older, because I think it has something to do with this. But I got on a health kick when I was probably 16, 17 years old. And I actually, by the time I was in college, I was the skinny kid. And there's something to be said for your self-image, the way you look at yourself. Because when I was overweight, I didn't really think I was overweight until suddenly I realized I was. And then when I lost weight, I got a hyper exercise program. That was when the running craze was starting to come along. They called it jogging back then, the jogging craze. And the health food kicked in. I ate my diet was sometimes there. I went through a phase where in the morning I would have plain shredded wheat and I'd pour skim milk, non-fat skim milk over it. And I had dry toast. That was my breakfast because I was so over the top with diet. And then exercise, I would either be running. I'd go out and run 5 miles. I go play basketball. I would do, when I was in high school, I did 1,000 jumping jacks a night in our downstairs bathroom. So no one would see me. So hyper exercise, got to the point where when I was in college, I came home from college one time and I was walking up my driveway and our next door neighbor who hadn't seen me in 5 years, Nancy, saw me and screamed. And she said, Joel, are you all right? Are you sick? I'm like, no, I'm fine. She goes, you're so skinny. You're so thin. And it takes those kind of things. It took those kind of things for me to kind of knock me out of things. Cause I'm not sure a lot of times you see yourself accurately, but so this topic is kind of personal to me because I've had this experience in my formative years. Especially when he talks about back then. I don't think I was pre-diabetic back then. I don't think I was that bad, but I was a roly-poly Jolie. That's what, at times was my nickname. So it does kind of strike a chord with me, what he's saying. But I'm wondering what you guys think is, how much have you heard about this? About 6 months ago, or so, whenever it was that Robert Kennedy came on board with Trump. I think it was probably after the assassination attempt, but he gave a speech about this, about the diet in America, processed foods, the food industry, and how it's affecting us health-wise. And I'm just wondering, I'm fairly new to that end of it. Since I haven't really thought about this much since I was a kid, and since I was in college, and I kind of went through that phase of health food and eating great and, paying a lot of attention to what I was eating. Now that I'm officially a senior citizen here, I just hit 65. I'm finding that I have to be concerned with it again, not necessarily so much what I eat, although that's a big deal. But the amount I eat, I cannot eat like I used to, because I've always had a big appetite, always, but I can't eat the way I used to. I have to cut my portions down, and I don't feel like I'm done because my 20-year-old brain says, hey, eat that whole plate of spaghetti or chicken or whatever it was. The other night it was this chicken that we went to a restaurant. It was amazing. And I ate the whole thing. I regressed. I shouldn't have. I should have saved half of it for later. But anyways, so I'm wondering what you guys think. You guys chiming in here? Nobody seems to be chiming in. But so I'm just thinking, when he talks about things like seed oil, I have been paying attention, investigated some labels lately, just in the last couple of days preparing for this. A lot of things we have seed oil in them. Sunflower seed oil, I think, sunflower oil is the one I see the most of. We cook with olive oil. Like last night, my wife and I did lettuce wraps with olive oil and toasted sesame oil, which is a seed oil. Yeah, it does go day by day, doesn't it? Seriously need an appetite suppressant on some days. But no, that's, and that is, I think, part of it right there. Somehow, somewhere down the line in America, we have lost our enough button. It doesn't seem, going back to the history of this, I've paid a little bit of attention to the history of this kind of thing. I know I was listening to Jordan Peterson once, and he made a comment that I had never thought about. And I think he was talking about something like this subject, about how overweight Americans are. And he said, it's really a miracle that we are, especially the poorest people in our society, are the ones who have the biggest problem with being overweight. And he said in the entire history of the world, that has never happened. The poorest people in your society should be the ones that are starving. And the richest people should be the ones that are having problems with their weights, but it's the opposite. And he said something interesting. He said, it's one of Western civilization's biggest accomplishments has been to make calories cheap. And he said, calories used to be very expensive. You had to exert a lot of energy and a lot of resources to get a single calorie. And it was almost a trade-off. The amount of farming you had to do, the amount of physical labor you had to do to get the money to buy food if you weren't a farmer, right? But think back when we were farming, agricultural society, you had to do a lot of work. You had to expend a lot of energy, a lot of calories to get that those crops, those calories from the ground or from the livestock that you had. So, okay, Chloe's here. Yeah, Chloe, we're talking about calories and make America healthy again. So glad you made it. AC, I do all of it, but it's tricky because some are not the same. Costco has one in a can that's supposed to be very pure. Yeah, there's always that thing, how much do you believe the labels and the advertising? Because I always comment to my wife, why is everything's low fat or non-fat, and yet we're bigger than ever. So it's like caffeine free versus, it's not really caffeine free. And if it's non-fat, if it says non-fat, it's not really non-fat, but there's certain rules and stuff that they can kind of go around and get around. Okay. And the beef tallow. The one thing I don't understand is the beef tallow. That's new to me. Yeah, it's new to me too. We were at a burger place here in our town that just opened up, and they said they're frying their French fries in beef tallow. And beef tallow, I don't know how it's different from lard, but I don't think it is. I think it's just the drippings from when they made their hamburgers. And that's what they fry their French fries is. Now, 40 years ago, even 20, 30, 10 years ago, that would have been unheard of. That would have been the most unhealthy thing in the world. Now they're saying it's the most healthy thing in the world. I know eggs. For years, I didn't eat eggs because of the cholesterol. I do have high cholesterol. And then I think 5 years ago, all of a sudden I heard something say, some USDA or somebody came out and said, oh, by the way, there's something in the eggs that breaks down cholesterol, so you don't have to worry about eggs anymore. So for 40 years, I didn't eat eggs for no reason. So these things change so much. But getting back to what Jordan Peterson was saying, he said the biggest accomplishment in Western civilization, one of them was making calories cheap. And that happened somewhere within the Industrial Revolution, that is probably around the turn of the 20th century. But now it's gone, we've been so successful at it that even the poorest among us are overweight and have the most health problems, diabetes and that kind of thing. So, but it does goes to show you what, you were talking about the beef tallow thing, which Robert Kennedy was talking about, Sean Hannity with the fries, is Sean Hannity, who's talking to him. Sean Hannity, who's talking to me, is a keto guy. So, which means all fat, all protein, very low carbs. And I went on a diet like that about 10 years ago, and I did lose 5 pounds immediately, but it's hard to keep up. But the idea is that the more fat you put into your body, the more your body will burn fat. The more carbs you put in the body, your body will burn the carbs and store the fat. So fat doesn't make you fat. Carbs essentially make you fat. And I had success on the keto diet, and I kind of still kind of half do it, And so I'm not surprised at the beef tallow thing, but I'm surprised that it's beef tallow. I've always heard that pork fat is very good for you. Duck fat is very good for you. Obviously, avocado. We do some stuff with avocado oil. Sometimes I cook with avocado oil, which seems to me is a seed oil too. But that's supposed to be very good for you. But then I've also read things where the seed oils are also, they have different kinds of things in them that help with, I think, cholesterol. I think the big thing with seed oil is inflammatory, at least inflammation probably, which I have a problem with. So that there could be something to that also. But ketosis, the process by which your body cannot find carbs to burn for energy, so it burns your fat. Yes, that, good job. Thank you for that, Chloe. That it was what my diet was about, getting into ketosis, not ketoacidosis. And that was the danger if you go to where your body starts eating itself. So that was kind of the balance you try to find. But yes, you want to get, where it's like a machine burning fat for energy. And I saw the guy that there's a guy in my church that was very much into it. It's kind of like a multi-level marketing thing that he was into. And he was an ex-Marine, and he lost 40 pounds, and he might have lost 80 pounds, and he was all gung-ho on it. But he burned out. He couldn't do it either. Now he's back up to the weight he was before he did that. So these things it's an eternal struggle because, and I think Jordan Peterson's right, we're in a society that calories are abundant. They're everywhere. And Atkins was a fan for which we did back in the day. Yeah. I never did the Atkins thing because I didn't need to at the time when that came out. But I know a lot of people, very overweight people that are on Atkins. Now I'm seeing people on Ozempic. We have some neighbors who are on Ozempic. And I've heard good things about Ozempic, but I've heard some really bad things about Ozempic. But it's this crisis we're in where we have this problem. Out here in California, it's not so bad. We're getting ready to go to the Midwest next week. And whenever we go to the Midwest, we notice much more of a problem, especially with our extended family. There's a lot of people who, even since I met them 17 years ago, have gained a lot of weight. But, and that could be the weather, lifestyle, whatever it is. But I mean, all we do when we go back there is eat. And since the weather's usually bad, there's nothing to do but eat and sit and talk or watch TV or whatever. So I think that has a lot to do with it too, your environment. So I'm just wondering, when Robert Kennedy talks about this, how it was back in my day or our day, when kids weren't overweight and a doctor wouldn't see a kid who's pre-diabetic, and now a third of the kids are pre-diabetic. One of the things, I think there are other factors. I don't think it's just diet. I think it's definitely physical activity. Screens, what we're doing now has made the problem much worse, because there is we are in a neighborhood with a bunch of kids. And in my day, if I lived in this neighborhood, the kids would be out roaming the streets all the time. And we do have a couple kids that are free range kids, but we don't really see the kids. They're either inside playing video games, or their parents are controlling their activities. This is one of the things, I think, believe it or not, when it comes to childhood obesity, I think parenting has a huge impact on it. Ozempic. Alex Jones came out and said on Twitter that Ozempic can paralyze the organs. That's the kind of thing I've heard. I haven't heard from him, but I have heard these kinds of things. I trust my neighbors are under the care of a doctor and they can manage that. But I think parenting has a big deal with it. in a lot of different ways, because they also talked about the anxiety and depression among kids that could be diet related, and I don't doubt that it is. But I think the soapbox I'm always on is parenting today and in the last, say, 30 or 40 years has changed from when I was a kid. My parents were adults, and they were an adult man, an adult woman in an adult world. Okay. They didn't have a lot to do with they had a lot to do with my upbringing, my education, discipline in the home, things like that. But they didn't have a lot to do with my play, my hobbies, my interests. Today, parents are so involved in their kids' worlds, not just in their kids' lives, they're involved in their kids' worlds. They play with their kids. They dress like their kids. They have the same interests as their kids. They arrange their kids' activities all the time. And I think that is a very bad trend. I remember talking to a young couple in our church a couple weeks back, and they were talking about their son. Their son was with them and kind of clinging to mommy's like 10-year-old kid. And so then I said, I asked the dad was talking, him and I were talking, and I said, we were talking about his son. I said, do you ever just open the door and tell him, hey, go outside and go play, go find something to do? And he looked at me and goes, oh no, then that means they wouldn't be with us. And I kind of held my tongue, and he went, well, that might be good for him to do that. It had never occurred to him that his child would not be with him at all times. And as much as, children are precious to us, I think that's a problem. I think what it means is that we can't let go of our kids. We're not adult enough to let our kids grow up and have experiences outside of us where we are not involved in it. And I think that might, you call helicopter parenting, you call bulldozer parenting, whatever it is. But I think also it stems from this, and not to call you out on this, but when you say you're a kid, I've had that tendency too, that I wear a collared shirt here because I want to look semi like an adult on this. But we dress like kids, we act like kids as adults. And I think our children see that. And my hypothesis is that the lack of adulting in parents leads to some of this anxiety and depression in our kids because they don't see us as adults. My dad, I looked at my dad as a complete man adult. The way he dressed, the way he talked, what he did, he was just a man's man. And all his friends were like that. They played cards, they smoked cigars, and we were seen and not heard. They didn't really want to. My dad would never have wanted to enter my world of interest or play or whatever. He's just he had his thing. And that gave me a certain amount of security that my dad and my mom too. My mom was that way. She didn't control a lot of my activities. She did some, but she pretty much said, hey, like all of us of my age, go outside and play. When the street lights come on, you need to be home. And she didn't really care what I did. Just do it. So I think that translates into a lot more things than just, I think that has made our kids anxious and depressed because their parents, they don't have the security that their parents are adults. And I think it also enters this area too, because we also don't eat like adults. I was telling my son about the Little League banquets I used to go to were banquets. We would have to wear a coat and tie, and it would be a formal kind of banquet. And our dads were in coats and ties, and we had to be in coats and ties. And we ate a nice dinner and had our little award ceremony and got our trophies. Nowadays, if you have a Little League banquet, you go to a pizza place, and the dads are there in shorts and t-shirts and their hats backwards or whatever, and the kids are in their uniforms, and you're munching on pizza and running around. And there's no formalizing. There's no sense that, hey, us as adult men, we're going to teach you young men how to. This is what a banquet's about. This is what a formal banquet's about. This is how I remember I couldn't cut my meat. My dad had to cut my meat for me. And I was so embarrassed that he was cutting my meat for me and the rest of the kids there were cutting their own meat. And I thought, I've got to learn to cut my own meat. This is embarrassing. So I learned to cut my own meat. So that kind of thing doesn't happen these days. And I think that has a lot to do with it too, because mom and dad they're either so busy on their phones and their social media, or doing what they just kind of throw food at the kids, or we haven't taught our kids how to eat because we don't know how to eat. And our kids don't see that in us. So there's so much of this, there's so much in society in addition to this, in addition to what Robert Kennedy and Sean Hannity were talking about. And there's so much in the Bible about parents showing their kids the way, bringing their kids up in the discipline and training of the Lord. We talked about this here. On Lucas, I think you got today's passive parenting as a form of gaslighting that only guilts parents into submission to their own children. That's a good, yes, that's really what it is. You are submitting to your own children. Your children are kind of they're the ones in charge. And when you give the child the impression that they're the ones in charge, that can lead to a lot of anxiety for them. And that can have a lot of long-term effects on them. And they will figure out things for themselves, but in their unformed brains, they don't know the right way to do things. So yeah, that is a very good way of putting it, Lucas. So, my aunt killed a hog, gave me some. I was dumbfounded at the difference between that pork and what I use with the same lettuce too. Oh, some with lettuce from the garden, tomatoes. Yeah, my mom used to tell me she would grow up on a farm of that was just a different world. It was a different world than what we have today. And most of us don't know where food comes from. We don't know how it's produced. So we don't know the right way to eat it. So we'll see where this all goes. I think I'm all for it. I'm a little worried because as much as there's a problem with obesity and diabetes and health problems with people these days, there's also kind of an obsession with health and fitness that can sometimes get unhealthy too. We can tend to make an idol out of our own health and our own physical fitness. My goal is just to stay healthy. I would like to be physically fit like I was in college, but I'm not going to spend too much time trying to make it happen and keep it. And I didn't when I was younger. I like I said, I used to play basketball a lot. I water skied, all that kind of stuff. And I was in pretty good shape, but I was never obsessed with being in perfect shape like a lot of people are now. So there's both sides of it. I think we have, as Christian people, we have some part in this, and we also have both sides of this. A lot of us need to eat better and teach our kids how to eat better and how to eat healthy, and let our kids go. Let them. I think a lot of the things that happen when you're a free range kid, when you swing on that rope off the branch of the tree, or when you get chased out of someone's yard or whatever, I think that kind of thing, or girls, I've never had a girls experience, but being free range, but those kinds of things, I think, fire off neurons that build things in us. But also, I don't think that we need to make idols of our health and have it all consumed and lose our focus on what's really important. So it's a really interesting topic. I'm glad it's on the table. About health and quality of life, and that you need to do whatever you can to just keep it at that. So I'm out of time. Thanks for chiming in, and thanks for listening as usual. I don't know if we'll see you tomorrow. I don't think we'll see you tomorrow, but I'll see you next week. So take care, everyone, and